What up? What up? It's another water for the thirsty. The word simply, the word refreshing. Tonight, at the beginning, it's just going to be me and Jerry for now, chopping it up, talking a little bit. I expect some others will join us today, but today's one of those days where you know it goes the way it goes. Since the last time we've been together, though, we've been in the book of Ezekiel and Jeremiah in that time period, Psalms, and in the writings of John. Um, we just kicked off John, the Gospel, but we've been reading the other writings of John and Luke since the last time we were
Yeah,
together. So
we were kind of all over the place.
yeah, yeah. Well, it appears
In a
that we're
good way.
all
In a
over
good
the
way.
place because the the Bible is not linear.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is tracking the timeline, and so part of what's happening in the timeline is in Ezekiel, and then part of it is in Jeremiah, and then part of it is in Chronicles, and so we following it that way. Um, and then what we've been doing in the New Testament, we did the Gospel of Luke, but then we are going into the writings of John because it's the end of the year. So we started with First, Second, and Third John. Going to read the Gospel of John, and then go into Revelation for the writings of John to close out the year. So that's kind of where we are with that. And then we have just a handful of New Testament books starting December 16th to close out the end of the year. I call them the power chapters and reminder chapters, and then of course the Christmas chapters in there, Luke 1 to 4. So that's kind of how the reading plan goes. Courtney, what up, man? We missed you last week. Hope all is well.
Yeah, man, busy, but I'm glad
Uh,
to be back.
welcome, welcome,
Yes,
welcome.
sir.
How's the reading been treating you?
Been good.
It's been treating you good or not so good?
Not so. I haven't been so good too.
All right, cool, cool. I have a before I get to my verse, I'm leading into my verse with a series of questions, right? I'm gonna give you a little background, so you understand where I'm coming from. So last time we were on, I did conduct this session from my bed because I was in like hella pain and I couldn't sit upright, right, in my lower back. So I was kind of propped up on the bed, leaning. It just looked like I was relaxing, but I was in real discomfort. I went to see the doctor, and he told me he thinks I might have sciatica, but he did an X-ray and then he sent me to do an MRI that same night. But I couldn't get another appointment with him until later on. So Friday night that day, I was just in tons of pain with my back, right? Um, I finally got the MRI read today, and so I know what it is. And there's a small, well, small is a centimeter small, but small could be big and big could be small. Jay, what do
Hmm.
you say? Is it small or big? It's a,
I think for where it is and what it is, it's big.
all right, right. It's a big bulge in my back pressing against my nerve where some of the soft tissue between my L5 and S1 vertebrae is pushing out against the thing. It's like a centimeter big. So that we just know what it is now. Now we're figuring out what it is. And the kinds of things they're talking about is stick it to the needle to reduce the pain and the swelling, to reduce the size, or chop them open and deal with it, right? Surgery. Naturally, the emotions that I am experiencing are a little bit of nervousness. I'm not afraid as much, but
Mhm.
I'm a little nervous. Right?
Okay.
So I wanted to ask, um, because of this verse, I'm gonna give you the verse first. I just want to hear your thoughts on nervousness and fears. Um, is fear good, bad, or neutral? Is fear natural? Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? And I'm talking in a spiritual, well, let's start in a general sense and then move to a spiritual sense. So yeah, is fear a neutral thing? And is the problem how I respond to being afraid? Is it okay to be afraid? Is fear good, bad, or neutral?
Hmm. I think that fear. Hmm, I guess I would say it's neutral.
Why you say that?
Uh, 'Cause I think I'm leaning towards what you were saying about the reaction to it. I think that fear, at times, the first thing I thought about was folks that are in like maybe military or something, right? I think there's a respect for your surroundings, the situation, the it's like understanding that there's danger or that there's some harm that could come. Um, so I think that like fear in that way, I look at it as awareness of your surroundings, like, um, and and in that
The awareness
sense,
of danger is what you
yeah,
hear you say. Okay.
yeah, with that, something that's going to you know that it can cause you harm or possibly you know death, really. Um, and I think that we're wired as human beings to, well, most times, I know there are lots of people that are in maybe not right in their mind. They may have some illness or something to that effect, but for the most part, I feel like we're all wired to want to live, right? And that preservation of that survival instinct. So I think that we naturally will notice things and like have an understanding of it. Once we've reached a certain age, I think. Because obviously I think that young kids don't really know danger. Like my grandfather used to say, young lions don't know danger, right? So you get to that stage where you have a understanding. You're like, hey, this could cause me some harm here. That's my thought.
All right. So you see fear as an understanding of danger. You thinking of fear as respect of danger as opposed to being afraid.
Yeah, it's just like,
Okay.
something could happen
Okay.
this way. Like
Right.
you said, now your reaction is, you know, based off of that, emotions. Those are things sometimes you'll just comes the spur of in the moment. But I think it's based. You first think about that situation. If you have that opportunity to think about it too, that's the other thing too. Sometimes things kind of happen instantaneously, but
I got you. What do you think, Jerry? Fear, good, bad,
Ooh,
neutral.
that's a that's a doozy. I'm leaning with Courtney in that fear is neutral, but again, in the spiritual context, I'm thinking of the the two most repeated phrases in the New Testament are "fear not" and "do not be deceived."
In the Old
So if it's
Testament too.
sorry,
It happens God says it a lot in the Old Testament too.
correct. So it's like, well, if it's neutral, why the warning about it? And maybe we'll have to get into the actual Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic meaning. But I think it's he knows that fear is a naturally occurring emotion. It's usually tied to um, danger or uncertainty or both. And I think spiritually, all God is saying is don't be overcome by it. Don't let it lead your decision making. Don't let it sit on the throne. It's just like anger, right? There are things that will naturally make us angry. There's a thing like righteous indignation. I mean, if you heard some grown man try to beat up your kid, naturally and rightly, you'll be angry. Um, you probably shouldn't run him over with your car, but you unless you can get away with it. Sorry. Um, so I think really it's the uncertainty, which could cause fear. but then we have a choice through through God that we could make whether we're going to stay afraid or not. And I think people make the mistake of thinking that it's a one-off decision, but it's just like forgiveness, right? Every time you remember, every time you feel the fear welling up, you have to make a decision. You know what, I won't succumb to it. And even if you're feeling the feeling of fear, bravery means you still go ahead and do it, right? But I think, yeah, I think it's just a naturally occurring thing, and it's really about whether or not you let it sit on the throne and lead what you choose to do or do.
Hmm. So I have a comment here that says, fear is natural, it is awareness, it is enlightening. However, dwelling in it is another matter altogether.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't have a position yet. I'm still wrestling through it. I'm wrestling through it because of what Jerry is saying, and my verse kind of lends to it as well. Fear not is the command. And is there a difference between fear and being afraid? Are
I
those,
think
are those synonyms? Are they one and the same? Are they different? Is there a difference between being nervous and being afraid? And
I think there is a difference. I mean, you could be you could be nervous to talk to a girl for the first time, nervous to drive a car for the first time, nervous to you heard you might have a promotion coming, or there's the typical. I do a lot of presentations and so on, but there are times when you go in front of a room of 1,000 people, you're still gonna get a little butterflies in your stomach, right? Um, and I think that's like nervousness. That's not bad. The interesting thing with the example you gave though is when there's all that physical pain to deal with, it takes it to another level, right? Because now, um, I mean, you're going to be afraid in the night if you turn left, you turn right. You're going to be afraid if you get up. If will you? How much pain will you be in it? The physical pain is one thing to fear something just mentally, but that physical, that yeah,
I like to point that out because I think Courtney was hinting at something. Children don't have experience with things, and so they're not really afraid of certain things. They're afraid of things that they have this experience with, or that stimulate them in a negative way, right?
right.
And so, if I have no experience with it, then I'm not afraid of it. Somehow, my being burned, or as you pointed out, being in pain, contributes to me being afraid, because I don't want to experience this hurt, this harm, as Courtney used the word danger that I'm experiencing, right?
Right.
Um,
What
and
was the difference between when, like, before you got the, um, the diagnosis? Like, isn't there some kind of fear in that too? It's kind of like what's going on.
yes, I was I was nervous. I would say I was nervous about um, whether this is just something that can be fixed and it just needs to be fixed, or whether something I now have to live with. And I think it was the uncertainty of the matter. I did not have a thing that I could define, and so I was my thoughts were in and around the uncertainty of the matter. A little bit of reading I've done, nervousness is tied to uncertainty, fear is tied to concrete discernible danger. I didn't want to skip to that too fast, but since we're here, I discovered that that's one of the differences between nervousness and fear. But what we are pointing out is that fear is tied to experience or awareness.
Mm, mm.
So it doesn't naturally occur, does it? Is it? I mean, it's not inherent,
Mm.
is it?
I don't know because like using the maybe maybe it doesn't have to be your experience.
Yes, no, that's why I say experience or awareness. Awareness. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be your experience.
So because you could be socialized or is culturalized or it's
Both.
socialized to fear something that I mean you see that in some even uh, social or religious settings where don't talk to those people, they have weird beliefs kind of thing, right? and you grow up, don't talk to those black people or those Asian people or those whoever, whatever, because, and you have people genuinely afraid, you know. So
Mm.
But it's tied to some kind of idea, whether it's preconceived or actual, about the impact of a thing on me or on you, or you know.
and maybe that's why you get the spiritual command, you get to not be overwhelmed by it, because let's
Is that the command? So before we go on, is the command to not be overwhelmed or not to
or
be
not be
afraid?
controlled by it.
Then that's another thing I'm asking. Is
I
the
don't know.
command to not to let it to come up to, or not to have that emotional attachment at all?
I don't know.
Well, let's just read this first verse. Let me
Sure.
go with this one because this is the one uh, that caused me to reflect on this. It's Jeremiah 46:28. And then we can go to Joshua, because in the beginning of
1-9.
Joshua, 1:9, 1:8, the whole of Joshua.
Okay.
What all
That's
God
my
says to
my
Joshua.
jam. Yeah.
But let's start with Jeremiah 46:28.
28.
Yeah. But go from 27 through to the end. Courtney.
I got you.
Hillary,
All right. NLT 46.
while he's building that up, Sean says, Happy Sabbath. What's up, Sean? Batman, I'm going to hit you with that afterwards. I'm going to come back to it. And yes, because trauma brings about fear. Okay, yes. So it's tied to some kind of knowledge and awareness of some experience of some sort, whether it's yours or someone else's. All right.
But do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant. Do not be dismayed, Israel, for I will bring you home again from distant lands, and your children will return from their exile. Israel will return to a life of peace and quiet, and no one will terrorize them. Do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant, for I am with you, says the Lord. I will completely destroy the nations to which I have exiled you, but I will not completely destroy you. I will discipline you, but with justice. I cannot let you go unpunished.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like he's saying don't be overwhelmed? Or is he saying don't be afraid, period?
Mm. Let me look up dismayed because I don't know.
Yeah. Because this made suggest, like losing heart, thinking you're gonna be, and I mean, even if it's in the context of, where God, whom he loves, he chastens. Sometimes God chastens you and you're like, okay, that's it for me, right? And it's almost like he's saying, well, you're getting racked across the knuckles, but it's not, you know.
Right.
Let me see. Complete loss of courage, overwhelming and disabling terror.
Is it then, Jared, that the fear will come, but being afraid is a choice to respond to that fear in a particular way?
So I was about to ask that next question. Was there a relationship between fear and being afraid? Are they one and the same? Are there two ways of saying the same thing, or is one something that generates the other? And
I'm currently leaning on the side of one possibly generating the other.
I'm asking that because the word that has and the word that's afraid in 28 is listed here as fear. It is to fear, morally to revere, causatively to frighten. Causatively to frighten, to fear, to revere, to be afraid, to stand in awe, to be awed, to fear, reverence, honor, respect, to be fearful, be dreadful, be feared, to cause astonishment and awe, to be held in awe, to inspire reverence, godly fear, or awe, to make afraid or terrify. So the one word has multiple applications.
Mm.
In this instance, I guess the question is, what is God saying not to be?
Because he does say, fear God, give glory to him. And so I guess in that context, it's just revere him. Or, even when he says, fear not him who could kill the body, but him who could kill the body and soul. So it's like, if you're going to be fearful and afraid of somebody or something, but that's not a reverential way. It's never a good thing to have this idea that God is this vengeful dude waiting to strike you with lightning bolts if you slip up at all, right? So
Courtney, go to Joshua, because I like Joshua. I like Joshua 1.
Yeah.
Because God says it like 15 times to Joshua in there.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start with Joshua 1, verse 1. So we can hear all that he's saying. Maybe read the whole of chapter 1. Because it's one message.
Okay. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I am giving them. I promise you what I promised Moses. Wherever you set your foot, you will be on land I have given you, from the Negev wilderness in the southern to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates rivers in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, including all of the land of the Hittites. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua then commanded the officers of Israel, Go through the camp and tell the people to get their provisions ready. In 3 days you will cross the Jordan River and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you. Then Joshua called together the tribes of Reuben, Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh. He told them, Remember what Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you. The Lord your God has given you a place of rest. He has given you this land. Your wives, your children, the livestock may remain here in the land Moses assigned to you on the east side of the Jordan River. But your strong warriors, fully armed, must lead the other tribes across the Jordan to help them conquer their territory. Stay with them until the Lord gives them rest as he has given you rest, and until they too possess the land the Lord your God is giving them. Only then may you return and settle here on the east side of the Jordan River in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, assigned to you. They answered Joshua, We will do whatever you command us, and we will go wherever you send us. We will obey you just as we obeyed Moses, and may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Anyone who rebels against your orders and does not obey your words and everything you command will be put to death. So be strong and courageous.
Yeah. So what is he commanding? Not to be overwhelmed or not to be afraid. And if he's commanding you not to be afraid, is it bad, good, or neutral?
Mm,
so it seems like fear is neutral, but being afraid is bad.
Mm.
Because fear can cause you to be afraid, but you have to, I guess, arrest that, right? It's like, at least the way I'm seeing it, I could be completely wrong, but it's just like if you pray and ask God for patience, y- the only way to really get it is for your patience to be tried, and you arrest the desire to be impatient, right? So it's
Mhm.
like there are situations you're going to face, could be dangerous, could be uncertain, and you would fear, be fearful, but you have to make a choice not to be afraid.
Hmm.
That's that's where I'm at right now.
What do you think, Lauren? Is it all right to be afraid it's fear a natural thing, a good, let me ask it this way. God created emotions, right? Did he create fear as one of them in the bundle?
Yeah, there's healthy fear.
There's healthy fear. Tell us about healthy fear.
I mean, fear allows you to know, it's like you being aware of things that are dangerous,
Is
right?
that fear or awareness?
No, but it's so usually when like we don't jump in front of cars because we know it's dangerous, right? We don't
I'm
put
not
our
afraid of cars. Like I know that and I'm aware of that danger, but that doesn't make me afraid of cars. I don't have the fear of cars. I mean, I have respect for cars.
fear of dying.
Some people get to the place where they don't have fear of that and they're aware of it. They're aware of the danger, but they're not afraid of it. They welcome it. They embrace it. So that's why I'm trying to delineate between awareness and fear, because it doesn't appear that they're synonymous. And so I'm just pushing back a little bit on that idea.
I mean, your brain. Hold on. Let me give you. Because you go into fight or flight or freeze, right? Depending on what the situation is.
Yeah,
And
it's
if your
wise.
body
It's wise if you see somebody jacking a bunch of people to walk away, to flee. That's wisdom. I don't know if that is necessarily fear, right? So I guess the question becomes, what is fear? And maybe if we define that, we can know whether it's good, bad, or neutral. And whether it's the same as being afraid, or when I have fear, I am actually afraid. Are they the same? Are they different?
I don't think they're the same.
Because I really want to know what God is commanding here. And I want to then ask about my assertion. Because my assertion is fear is an assertion, a fear is a rejection of the reality of God's presence, is what I would like to assert based on this verse, Jeremiah 46:28. Fear not, for I am with you. So if I am afraid, I'm rejecting the reality that God is with me.
Okay.
That's my assertion. But before I get there, I'd like to understand what fear is and whether it is actually a bad thing. Because that's what God is saying. Fear not, I am here. Ooh, because I'm here, there's no reason to be afraid. So if I do experience fear, am I rejecting that reality? Is the presence of fear an indication that I don't, that reality doesn't mean as much to me?
I'm looking at the Bible dictionary, and there's a different meaning between afraid and fear.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Tell us more.
so fear, let's see, Bible usage, be or make afraid, dread.
To make you afraid. Okay.
Right. Reverence, uh, to fear, morally, to revere,
That's what I was looking
causatively,
at.
to frighten. It's
Is that
H3.
3372?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 6206, which is afraid. That was it says basically shake terribly, um, to tremble, feel dread. I was just throwing that out there. I don't know because that might even be different too. Like, do not be afraid.
So I'll say in this verse 46:28, it says, do not be 33:72. Do not fear.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Joshua 1:9 uses 6206.
Okay. English uses the same word to describe both.
It might be.
But the Hebrew is saying that to causatively make you afraid, fear causatively makes you afraid. So I guess there's that relationship, I guess. Yeah. So Sean is saying we are supposed to fear only God, and when we fear other things, means we are humbling ourselves before the creation rather than God. So one of the things we learned, Sean, is that fear, at least the biblical word for fear, has more than one meaning, and sometimes we blend them. And so I I don't think God wants us to be afraid of him, but we are commanded to fear him. And so there's the revere aspect of fear, and then there's the afraid aspect of fear, and they aren't the same. And so we're talking more about the afraid part, not the revere part. We definitely accept and acknowledge the command to respect, revere only God and not something else. We are now talking about being afraid, being nervous, being scared, that kind of fear. Um, so maybe if we change the word to scared, is scared being afraid, and this fear cause you to be scared. Okay, all right, we're getting somewhere. Afraid is the feeling of fear.
Mm.
Okay, so God is saying, don't feel the fear. Don't allow yourself to feel afraid.
And that's where I have a little bit of disconnect because
But
it's like,
afraid is usually like tied to something threatening and dangerous.
Absolutely.
So if he's saying don't fear, like what I'm doing or what's happening or whatever you're experiencing, like that thing can't hurt you. It's not dangerous as you think it is. So don't get caught up in what you're seeing because it may look dangerous and threatening and it could hurt you and blah 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 blah. But I'm
Or
here. So whatever level you think is gonna happen,
so
even if you die, you can come back.
I challenge that and say, yes, it is dangerous and it can hurt you, but I am here. So there's no need to be
Right,
afraid.
right.
Not that it won't hurt you, because that's another whole thing.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, whatever level of hurt it can do, it can't destroy you. Ultimately, destroy you. So he said, don't fear dying, but fear a person that could kill body and soul. Like they're like, don't worry about the death and hurting and the pain stuff. Like that's easy. Don't worry about the rest. Like
Let's
that's
use
easy.
this illustration. So I go back to Kimberly, my sister. She has a little dog, a little white dog,
Mm-hmm.
about 11
Mm-hmm.
years old. He's going
Mm-hmm.
blind in one eye. But every time we come over, he's excited to see people because the people in his house don't pay him no mind after a while because he's like part of the family, so they don't pay him no mind. When we come, at least I give him attention, and so he's come and drop himself on me and kind of make me try to touch him because he wants to be touched. Right? When we get there, he's excited, so he starts barking, he starts jumping on people, he's excitable. But my little kids, they inherit this fear of animals from their mother, and so when they come in, all the jumping and thing, so they're now paralyzed. They can't go inside. They can't focus on getting inside, taking off their shoes. And I'm trying to say, don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. Just take off your shoes and go inside. Focus on taking off your shoes and going inside. But they can't see anything but the dog jumping around and the fact that they don't want the dog to jump and touch them. And so they're stuck, right? Will the dog jump on them? Very likely. That's a reality. Is it dangerous? In their minds, it is, but is it really? If I perceive it to be dangerous, then I guess it is, right? Or is that not true? I guess I'm asking, does it actually have to be valid for me to recognize it as dangerous?
I mean, it's instinctual. Like I don't know. Like he gave us. This is how he gave us an amygdala. He gave us the thing that triggers
Good.
these
He gave
things
us
that
something, but what did he give us? because he's commanding us to do something other than what we are saying he gave us. Not so?
Right, but it allows you your your he gave us organs and things that warn us of danger and things when things aren't safe. Like that's healthy. That's a good thing. You're not supposed to just be like
Good. Warning, and so you're using good words. So I believe in warn. No, I mean I believe.
right.
I'm following along with warning.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
following along with recognizing danger. But
Mhm.
my recognition of danger is not fear of it. Yes?
It I
So
think it is.
I could recognize that if I smash Shorty without a condom, she could get pregnant. But I'm not afraid of it. There are people who might be afraid of that, but I'm not afraid of it.
Right.
But I recognize it as being a real, clear, and present danger.
Cautious. Right. 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 But not afraid. You may not
Correct.
be afraid.
And that's what we're trying to
Right. That's what I
separate
said.
and
They're
tease
different.
out. Is
Yeah.
fear, what is fear? Because fear can't just be awareness of danger. It has to be, it's something more because it causes this dynamic that we're calling up afraid. And there are people who have that same awareness of danger, that recognition identity. That is danger. That stove is hot. So I won't touch it with my bare hands. But I'm not afraid of the stove. Neither am I afraid of the iron. It's very hot, it's very dangerous. And if I mishandle it, I could hurt myself seriously and other people. And so I'm very cautious in how I handle it. But I'm not afraid of the iron. Do you follow what I'm saying? So what are you describing? And that's why I'm trying to
So
refine the idea a little.
I guess for me, like at some point initially, either by observing it or seeing it, you had that initial instinct of this is not safe, this is dangerous. Like that fear. Not terrified or like, oh my God, but you have that it, body instinct reaction. Oh, let's not do that. Let's not do that thing. You have it in you.
We have that, but what is that? Is that fear? We have that. I admit to that. We have that. We have that recognition of danger. But is the recognition of danger fear?
Well, by definition of fear of it being dangerous and having the feeling of being afraid,
No, that is a
then
response to that recognition. So I could recognize something to be dangerous and then respond with fear. Fear is my
right,
response to that
right,
recognition. But I can
mm-hmm,
also recognize that thing to be dangerous and not respond with fear, and
right,
fear not be my response.
right. Let me find synonyms. Hold on.
Right. I see some conversation going on in the chat. So Sean said scared and afraid are the same. Batman saying scared is being in a state of fear. And he's pulling out all the definitions.
Well, scared with
Scared is being in a state of fear. All right. I believe it does have to be valuable. It can't be obscure or something you only recognize.
Yeah, you were asking if the fear had to be real and
Oh,
present. Like,
it has to be valuable. Okay. Yes. Okay. Got it. Let's go back to when man sinned. What started happening around them?
hmm.
What did start happening around them?
Well, I
At one
guess.
point.
Well, no.
so
If you think about it, they didn't fear God as they should have, and
They did.
then
They did revere God. You don't think so?
okay, let me rephrase that. They
Yeah.
they to your point, Jared, there was something they were aware of the dangers of something, but they weren't afraid of it, so they went ahead and did it. And then they started being fearful of, okay, what is God going to do when He finds out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, And
Good
they went
point.
and hit themselves.
Yeah, they hit themselves from God, right?
And that's when they first said we were afraid, right?
Afraid. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And even though God was with them,
Yeah, they
God
were
was with them,
petrified.
they were afraid, right?
Mhm. Funny when they chose to be afraid, right?
Yeah, they were naked and afraid. Gerald says, but if that iron is in the hands of someone else, you have a healthy fear of the iron. Mm,
If the person is kind of crazy, yeah.
I have a fear of them, not the iron.
Yeah.
I still have a fear of them
Yeah.
because the iron
Because if
itself
they're
is
crazy enough, they don't even need an iron to damage you, right? Yeah.
correct.
Right. That's like a firearm. It's like when you're afraid of the firearm, it's really about who's wielding it. It's not.
Not the firearm itself. I'm not
Yeah.
You have
afraid
an
of
active shooter, you might be afraid of him with a gun, but then when the police come in with guns, you're like, whoo.
Or not.
Or or not. Depending on what you look like, yeah,
Right.
he's skittish.
Yeah.
What's the word for fear in the verse that you were trying to?
H3372. It's Yore. It means affright, be, make afraid, dread, full, put in fear, full, fearfully, be had in reverence, terrible, to fear, morally, to revere, causatively, to frighten, to fear, to revere, to be afraid.
Yeah, they
One
sound
word
like
describes all of those things.
it sounds like the extreme level of fear to me.
Hmm.
Look at Batman's last comment.
Dread,
I'm getting
dread
there.
something.
Sorry, you
That's
said
not
something,
no.
Louis?
No, I was saying it sounds like the extreme or towards the extreme side when it comes to fear.
Okay.
Because to dread and some of the other words you use, that's not no like little things like that's fight or flight. Like we running or we fighting. Like we're doing one of the two.
So I've heard someone say that fear is America's favorite pastime.
Fear is a what? Favorite person?
America's
America's favorite pastime.
Oh, yeah.
When you think of the things that we do for entertainment, they're things
Mhm.
that are meant to excite fear. Amusement
Yeah.
parks, movies,
And we celebrate people who
they
don't
gotta be
seem to
fighting.
have any rational sense of fear, right? So people who, what is it? What do they call it? Free climb and free dive and all this other stuff. So they're diving and climbing with little or no. Yeah, we think that's fantastic. They have no fear. It's probably no common sense, but yeah.
and that's where I'm trying to delineate between fear and common sense, between awareness and fear.
Hmm.
Well, because you can be desensitized to the point where you're not afraid of anything. Like that could happen outside of God. Like just
Mm.
every day. Like
Yeah,
I
when
used
you
to,
have no fear
right
of
now,
consequences, yeah.
I used to. There was a time in my life when I used to, like you said, America's favorite pastime. Like I wanted to see the next scariest movie or go on the next scariest ride and all these different things. And eventually, it got to the point where like the things that should be should give some kind of reaction, get some kind of something. Like it was just like, let's see what we can find that's worse than that. And so I feel like you can get desensitized to things and not be afraid of things, but that has nothing to do with God and you not.
Would you say it's also true that you can be desensitized to things and minimize or disregard the danger that it poses, and that's not necessarily not being afraid of it? Because I know that it have parts. So One time I was dropping a cousin home from a funeral in the south part of the island, Jerry,
Mm.
and she was going in one area in the north part of the island. We were going to drop her by the taxi stand in town, Jerry,
Mm.
but it was late and there was no taxi. So my partner said we will drive up inside. When we get up inside, up the hill, I get out to help her because she have this baby that she going. My partner said, boy, get back in the car. These people don't know you. You are dressed differently because I was dressed for a funeral. She lives here, you do not. There's one road in, one road out, and get back in the car. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He had an understanding of the nature of the people, how they respond to strangers, and what they could potentially do because they'll call before you reach down the road, somebody waiting on you down the hill, right?
Right.
So he's aware of that.
Mhm.
But he wasn't afraid to go up in there because he kind of knows it, but he has a respect for it. That's reverence, revere,
Mhm.
Okay.
which is different from being scared.
Right.
I'm not going up in there because something bad will happen to me. And I'm afraid that something bad will happen to me.
Mhm.
You see the
So
difference?
that's what I would call afraid. I wouldn't call that
Fear.
yeah.
Because fear is tied with reverence, we kind of put it aside from afraid.
I wouldn't
Let me,
I wouldn't
let me take some of these notes. Sean says Jerome is going on the right path, so he should keep going. A way back.
Okay.
Batman says every good horror flick has these basic tenets. I'm afraid because I can feel the fear, but then I become scared because I know the fear is real. Not sure what Gerald was laughing at here because I didn't pull it right away. Imagine God made this beautiful rose. Now, after sin, the rose started to produce thorns to protect itself and so on. Yeah, I'm wrestling hard with the idea that the awareness of danger is fear.
Well,
And
they say, are you saying is like, it seems like danger is like a learned concept, but you were saying kind of earlier with some, if you're not taught something is dangerous at a certain pivotal stages, you're just oblivious to it being
So,
dangerous. It's like oh, like you said with your example, I could think about certain places in New York City, right? Like the same situation. Like, look, if you don't know anybody in there, like
don't go.
don't go. Shorty could be fine, but don't go up in there. There's one way in, one way out.
Mhm.
Um, no. Or you know how it is in certain parts of Cali. So I've heard, you might wear the wrong colors in the wrong place. It's like you just don't know.
You know, it's interesting. I was looking at a Nat Geo thing with there's a tribe in Philippines, and from a very young age, they just throw their kids in the water. So the kids learn to swim, yes, but they, I guess, over a couple generations, have developed the ability because nobody's ever told them you can drown, and so they can hold their breath for between 13 to 15 minutes, which is unheard of anywhere else in the world. But they've never been taught that, hey, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. So they go out there and they do it. And it's like once you're born into that tribe, it's now almost like it's in your genes. It's a natural thing.
And
So
then you can teach people that same kind of fear, right? You can teach that fear.
yeah.
Yeah, there's learned fear.
And I guess that is where, that, well, Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe that's where he's going with it, that if we don't, were it not for sin coming in, it's, we're learning. Sin is what caused us to learn to be afraid.
Mm.
It's
Sin is
because
what
really and
causes
truly,
us to respond to this danger with
with
a
fear.
fearful heart. Okay.
Yes, 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 yes.
So like there was there's like
Because
experiment.
sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Finish, girl.
No, because I was just thinking, before that there was, I don't, there's no documentation of anybody being afraid. There's stuff they were aware of that they probably should have been afraid of, but they were like, I want to just go see what this, yeah.
So I'm gonna take this message from Batman before I come back to Gerald. Does fear also encompass respect? Yes, the biblical definition of fear is a two-pronged word. There's respect, and there is also afraid. So it's revere, which is respect, and you can use the same word to say I fear God, I respect Him, and then I can say I fear the shadow of death, which means I'm afraid of it. I'm not respectful of it, but it frightens me. It makes me scared. It makes me afraid. The one word has those two meanings, so I guess that may be part of why we are having this this.
But then maybe that's what Sean is saying. It's like, well, if the response of being afraid came as a result of sin, and you can fear the shadow of that and so on, when God says not to fear, it's like, well, don't give in to what was.
Respond to danger without being afraid.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Awareness can make raise to fear if the thing you're aware of has the ability to harm you. Oh, awareness can be raised to fear. Okay, can make fear. Oh, okay. If you're aware of the thing has the ability to harm you, yes, but it doesn't always have to, right? It can, but it doesn't have to. Which would then mean that it's a choice.
Because it's interesting. They take people who are afraid of firearms and afraid of gunfire, put them through basic training in the military, and they leave without any fear of it. It's just like second nature to them. They hear guns go off, and instead of ducking and duck and cover, they start looking around to make sure they know the direction it's coming from, and then try to draw their own firearm, right? But it's something that's trained out of them. So,
all right. So Sean says our mortality is what of fear because any danger posed can lead to death. Our mortality is what of fear because any danger.
I guess one of fear, or what we fear. I don't know.
Agreed. That is why we tussle. I guess Batman is talking about why we tussle with revere and afraid. Sean says, respond to danger with or without fear is subjective.
I don't know. I'm thinking like two things. It's like, what's the opposite? We're talking about being strong. What is the is that directly?
But here's the funny thing. According to the biblical definition, the opposite of fear is love, because perfect love casts out all fear.
Well, maybe there's that the biblical
definition in referential sense, right?
Well, no. I'm asking, when God says to Joshua, "Don't be afraid," his opposite in there is not love, but be strong and courageous.
Right.
His contrast, God's words contrast is, don't be afraid, be strong and courageous.
Yeah, because afraid will have you run in the other direction.
So respond to the danger with courage and strength.
I.e., don't respond to it by being afraid.
And then I wanted to throw in that wrinkle that some of those fears aren't all physical. There's some people that are afraid of getting their heart broken again, stuff like that. Maybe
there are people who are afraid of failing exams. So there's something I joke about. I remember we had a family meeting the first time I got a B in college, right? So I was afraid of getting a bad grade again.
All right, then you got over it.
It's like, yo.
But notice what you said there, Jerry. Fear appears to always be tied to something specific. It's in response to something that I have awareness about. So a component of fear appears to be awareness
Mhm.
and something concrete,
Right.
as opposed
Some
to
concrete outcome or consequence.
right, and as opposed to nervousness, which is uncertainty. It's I don't have a concrete outcome, and this is making me nervous or anxious, right?
Right.
Because there's nothing that I'm sure is happening or will happen, and I just wanted to make that contrast. Fear
Which
seems to
is,
be
you know,
tied
taking
to
us back to
something.
garden. I guess when God came looking for Adam and Eve and they realized, wait a minute, we didn't die right now, but maybe when he said we would die, it's because he would come here and kill us. So now we need to hide, right?
Right.
So there's some concrete we done messed up now that yeah.
Gerald said, and basically, we were trained on what to do in that situation, but still, people react differently.
Yeah. They may not have, you know, trained it out to them.
Yeah.
People
Well, I
survive
mean,
sometimes.
you can, just like you said, you can teach people to be afraid. Like there's like that, un, I guess similar to what Jared was saying. Like there was that unethical experiment that was done on a baby, where the baby was introduced to like a furry bunny or a rat or something, and the baby, unafraid of anything, was just playing with the rat, playing with things just fine. And then the scientists introduced like a loud clanging sound. So every time the baby saw the thing and he made, when he touched it, he made the sound. So eventually the sound was taken away and the baby was terrified of that thing from that point forward. It's
Yeah.
it's
Which
a
is to
learned,
Jared's point, right? There's a consequence of
there's
yeah.
there's an adverse thing that you experience tied to a thing that makes you afraid of it. That's why when they do like different therapies that try to get you to not be afraid of certain things, they have to like slowly like introduce you to the things.
As
And
it like if you're afraid of heights or something, they slowly start taking you. Okay.
mhm. So even just showing you clips before they
So
even put
fear is
that.
not natural.
Hmm?
So fear is not natural.
Some of it's learned. I mean, yes. So the awareness thing is instinctual, right? The thing we were talking about is instinctual. Our brain, based on the information we learn and the things we see, are aware of things that are not safe. For some of us, it does produce hormones and things, sweating and wanting to run or flee. And for some, it's just like, okay, we just don't want to do that. That's just not safe. That is not conducive to my survival. So I will not be doing that.
And then there are people who it actually produces a desire to go do the thing, right? Like
Right,
let's go drag race
right, right, right.
with no parachute on our car and 10 pounds of moss and yeah.
Hmm.
Just put that
So,
out.
what I've heard from this conversation is that we've teased out that what God did give to us is a way to detect and
Hmm.
identify dangerous situations.
Right?
Hmm.
He gave that to us.
Hmm.
That idea of fear is based on encountering those dangerous situations and responding to it that way.
Right.
And
Rather than being strong and
we're
courageous.
choosing to respond to it that way. And
Right.
sometimes it's a subconscious choice, I would assume, in many cases, reflexive choice,
Hmm.
but it's still a choice to respond to that dangerous situation. But I'm not bound to respond to that dangerous situation, even being aware that it's dangerous, with fear.
So I wouldn't say it's a choice all the time. I think it just can be unlearned. So I feel like similar to what Jerome was talking about, Adam and Eve learned, they introduced the fear thing, right? And from them learned fear, right? It's just passed on. So we learn to be afraid of things because we see our family or our mom or whatever, everybody screaming and shocked because they saw some baby sees that, like, oh, so I'm supposed to be afraid of that thing. I'm supposed to be scared of that thing. So it's like a continuous process that we have been.
So I will push back a little bit and go, if I can be told not to be afraid and I
No.
have the option of another response, then I'm
Okay.
choosing to be afraid. And I'll use this example. When I was doing desktop support, you used to have to install a lot of software. And sometimes we install these free tools that were helpful in helping to remove viruses and malware and stuff. But sometimes those free tools would have bundles, other things they want to install with you. And they would pre-select the option for you. They would make the choice in advance. And if you don't intentionally deselect it, you are choosing that option.
Okay. So you're aware of the
A
options
default
already.
option is a choice, whether you pay attention to it or not.
How could it be a choice if you're not aware of it?
Because you didn't take time to discover it, to
So your
acknowledge it.
ignorance is a choice, not the ignorance to be afraid. Or ignorance. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's a different choice. That's not choosing
The
to
response is
sign up for the
reflexive.
thing.
The response is reflexive, right? I would agree with you. It's reflexive. You hit my hand, I do that. But I could resist that reflex. Correct? You hit my hand, it reflexively pops out. That's reflexive.
Uh-huh.
But if I can stop that reflex action, then the reflex is a choice. That's all?
But reflex.
But again, this goes back to what
stop your
Sean was
reflex.
saying with what they do in basic training, where they are training you to respond in a way you may not normally respond.
So
Yeah.
wait, you said you can stop your reflexes?
Well, they train you to not respond in ways that you would normally respond.
Well, no, I'm not talking about emotionally. Like he was
No,
using
but I'm
this.
talking, but
Like,
physically.
you can
This is how
stop it.
people sit and do after they work out for an hour or 2 hours. They sit in an ice bath, and the body is like, "I need to get out of here." But you can train your mind to tell your body, "No, you'll sit in this ice bath for half an hour."
Your reflex
Okay,
is
so
to
that's
jump out.
not.
Yeah, your reflex is like, "I'm gone," or like how they teach people to walk on hot coals. Your reflex is to be like, "Gotta go."
Is that reflex?
I'm using the term reflex to say that it appears to be a default response, right? It appears to be a default response. It's default. But default is still a choice.
Mhm.
If I can choose something else, then it was a choice, whether I consciously did it or not. Subconsciously, I made a choice to go this way. And maybe I did it because I don't know any other way, and it's a reflexive choice. Because, and I think about the baby. What was the response there?
It scared the baby. The sound scared the baby. The
Startled.
loud clanging startled the baby.
But let's say the baby lived in a zone where that became the norm and he understood, oh, I know what that is. Would the sound startle him?
But then he would be unlearning.
He'd be making a choice. Yes?
He would be he'd be reconditioned.
Right, but it's a
I
choice.
now choosing
It's
not to be startled.
Yep.
It's not a choice until you've been reconditioned.
You got more information, so you decided to make a choice. So I won't do this anymore.
Yes, then you make it. Once you know that.
Yeah, but it was still a choice. Because you could continue, even if you get that information, you could continue to be
Right.
startled.
At that point, it's a choice. Once you've been introduced to the other option, there's a choice. But if you're not aware of another option, then that's not a choice to be afraid. You're just afraid.
Maybe.
I think I don't know what we're talking about, but are we talking about like innate responses versus choices?
Right.
Is that
We were talking about whether fear is an innate response or a choice.
Well, you're not born with fear. You don't have a sense of fear when you're born. That's why babies will jump off stuff. You don't learn fear until you hurt yourself.
Until something
So you
happens.
choose to be afraid after an experience.
It's associative, right?
Experience teaches you other emotions. So you then say, man, that hurt from the first time. You don't know what fear is. So I'm afraid of the hurt that's going to come with it because
Right.
I've done it once.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not fearful. You're
So you
born
make that choice
not knowing
because
any
of the
better.
experience,
Fear is something.
right? The experience is causing this
Exactly.
now.
So you're
this
choosing.
choice
So
of
the
this response.
experience, for instance, the experience could have caused pain, or it could have caused laughter, or it could have caused embarrassment. And now your fear of that thing, because fear by itself isn't a thing. It's fear of something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you're choosing to be afraid of this thing based on what you believe might happen. So you are choosing what's going to take place.
Thank you, Sharika. That's what I was thinking, but I could not.
That's what I'm here for, you know?
I appreciate that. I couldn't articulate that, but yeah. And I was only saying it because the reverse is true. If I can choose something else, then I'm choosing this. Yeah.
Right, but once you know that another option exists, that's where there's a choice.
No.
If you know another option exists,
no. Before you know fear exists, again, fear is a learned behavior. Before you knew it exists, you chose to be afraid of being embarrassed and or falling and or fear and or excuse me, of being hurt. So you're choosing it.
Hmm.
You experience something, and as a result, now you're afraid of it happening again. You can choose not to be afraid of it.
In the first time you experience it.
And because the first time you did this thing, you weren't afraid. That's why you did it.
You're right.
Right? And so therefore you weren't afraid the first time. It's after someone experienced it or someone told you about it, that's what happened with fear. It's like when people say they have a fear of falling. You fell or you saw somebody fall and you're like, oh man, I never want to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Right? So you're choosing not to fall.
Yeah.
For the fear of what you think is going to come with it.
Yes. And in that first time, if someone was there to tell you that's normal, are you afraid the next time?
Because there's an option.
No, not because there's an option.
But listen, like Lorraine, when your daughter first jumps off the bed as a kid, nobody told her that she should be afraid. She just jumped off. And depending on the experience, she gets up and does it again.
Yes.
And depending on my reaction to her falling determined how she bounced back. So if oh my God, then I'm just telling my experience. When I made a big deal or about the situation, that's the things that she was afraid of. But when I was like, oh, you're okay.
Right, but that's the second time. The second time.
No, first time.
Yeah, but
so for instance, her doing it, she wasn't afraid to do it. You influenced her and put fear into her. Her default wasn't fear.
Right. I'm with you.
Her default isn't fear, right? Mm-hmm. So fear is not an innate thing. Your default is in so many ways unbiased. Your person or experience can then shape how you look at something, and then you decide, do I take on this fear and let it stop me? Or don't I?
And I don't think it's always conscious. I don't think I'm always thinking through it, but I'm still making a choice, and that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's the part that I'm stuck on. How do you unconsciously make a choice?
Like, the same way you unconsciously know how to get to the bathroom at night. When you half asleep, you gotta pee. That's an unconscious decision to walk to the bathroom. You know your way through the house without being fully awake.
Yeah, but that's regular choosing. That it becomes unconscious. But how do you start out unconsciously making choices about what you're afraid of and what you're not afraid of?
The same way you make.
No, you make.
The same.
Yeah, you make choices, and those choices decide your emotion towards it.
Correct. The experience decides your emotion.
You cannot. Right. You can't be. You're not just fearful. You're fearful of something, right? Like no one says, "Man, I'm afraid." What are you afraid of? is the question.
Right.
Fear doesn't stand on its own. It's associated with something.
Right.
Let's do it this other way. Let's use this other illustration. Let's say I jump off the bed and I enjoy it. Did I make a choice to enjoy it? Or was that instinctive? Let's say the boy kisses me and I enjoy it. Did I choose to enjoy it? Because there's no alternative. There's no alternative to, according to the thought process that you're outlining. There's no alternative to not enjoy it, because the first thing I experienced was enjoyment. So there's no alternative. So I didn't really choose to enjoy it. I just enjoyed it because there was no alternative. But I don't believe you believe that to be true. So CJ, before we lose you, that's where we started. We are in Jeremiah 46:28, and we are working our way there. We're working our way there. We were trying to establish if fear is innate or a choice, or because God is saying, "Don't be afraid because I'm with you." But before we could have gotten to that, we were trying to wrestle out this piece. But that's where we're heading. It's good to see you too, brother. Well, I hope you didn't. But you follow what I'm saying? If it doesn't work for enjoyment, then it won't work. I mean, it can't apply it to fear, because either way, I did something, I had an experience with it, and that experience led me to whatever feeling I was feeling. Just because it's the first one I experienced doesn't mean it's the only one I could have experienced. And it doesn't make it my only option.
But
Jared,
is being driven by the experience, not by the options.
It reminds. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Oh, no. Go ahead, Rika.
It reminds me when I tell you I try everything twice to make sure I like it. Right? It's like that first time. It's like, I could be undecided. I could be influenced. I could be doing a lot of things. That second time, I'm like, I'm making a conscious decision, right? Like,
yeah,
I have all kind of choices.
I tried it and it didn't go as I didn't really enjoy it. But is that because I don't enjoy it, or because that first time was boredom?
But you're not choosing the enjoyment. It's your response to the thing.
Exactly. That's our point. You're not.
You're saying it's a choice, and I'm like, you're not choosing to enjoy. You just enjoy it.
So let me do it this way. Enjoyment is subjective.
Okay.
So I may have a beer for the first time and enjoy it. Jerry may have a beer for the first time and not enjoy it.
Right.
Right? Because of my experience, I then make a choice, whatever that choice is.
But your choice after, not the first time.
So the experience is the experience. What we're talking about is the response to the experience. So if I have an enjoyable experience, I look back and I say, yes, I enjoyed that experience. I'm willing to do it again. If I don't have a good experience, yes. And if I don't have a good experience, or it hurt me in some way, I say, I don't have an experience. I don't want that to happen again. That is fear.
But that's conscious. Is the unconscious part that I wasn't with. So that's all conscious. So you have an experience, then from that point you consciously choose, do I want to do this again or do I not want to do, oh, this wasn't safe, I didn't like that, I'm not doing that again. Or yes, this was enjoyable, I'm going to try it again.
Okay.
But the first, I can't see a unconscious choosing to be afraid. yeah, I can't.
Are you familiar with unconscious bias?
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's similar. Your experiences are shaping your unconscious bias.
Right.
But you're not fully aware that you're biased.
But you're not fully aware that you're biased, but the experiences have made you choose to be biased.
Correct.
Okay, so how does that?
Let's go another route. Let's go another route. Just because I don't know it's the law doesn't mean I'm not breaking the law.
Yep.
I'm still with you. I still not getting
I'm still choosing to break the law, even though I don't know it's the law. So maybe I unconsciously broke the law. Because
perhaps
I did not,
even unintentionally, right?
Well,
because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't like so most of your emotions are based on experience, whether they're conscious or unconscious in so many ways might be irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. But experience shapes it. And the brain makes decisions either on its own without you going through the process of being aware, or it doesn't. But it's all historical data that's running back and forth, and the choices are being made.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's historical data. So when you're born, you have no historical data. You have no idea what's going on. Who let me on this ghetto earth? And depending on what you experience, then it gets interesting.
Maybe explicit implicit would be better for me than unconscious.
Okay. Fair enough.
Unconscious, like
I would say explicit implicit is different from subconscious, and I wouldn't say it's unconscious. I would say it's conscious and subconscious, not unconscious.
Okay.
Right, because things can exist in your subconscious, and remember, it's only in your conscious because you're aware of it. That doesn't mean that it's not happening in the background, which is the subconscious world. It's like when you're having a conversation and something triggers you. You didn't even realize you were thinking about this thing, but now all of a sudden you're crying, or all of a sudden you're happy.
So I'm hearing, thanks to the refinement of the idea from the bishop, that I can make the assertion that fear is a rejection of the reality of God's presence.
Is that? Wait, give me that one more time.
Fear is a rejection of the reality of God's presence.
So when they say the fear of the Lord is the being of wisdom, is that a different word that we're using, and we're just using the same?
We're talking
English
about being
word?
afraid fear, not reverence.
Okay,
fear.
Cool. Not the respect fear. Okay, cool.
No. And because
all right, so running one more time.
Jeremiah 46:28 says, "Do not be afraid, my servant Jacob, for I am with you, declares the Lord." My assertion is fear is a rejection of the reality of God's presence.
Does God's presence equal the availability of God's power?
I'm not sure, but if he is the one saying, "Don't be afraid because I am here," if I'm afraid whether he had given me his power or not, I'm rejecting that reality or the value of that reality. Because what he says is, and this is what CJ here says, how about I choose not to fear because God is with me? When he says, "Don't be afraid," it's almost always followed with, "Because I am with you." So if he tells me,
I guess
"Do not be afraid, I am with you,"
from the presence of what could really happen if the Creator's here, type of thing. What's the worst that could happen? I'm here, from that type of lens.
Or just from him saying, "Don't be afraid, I am here."
Right. But isn't that similar to when you were with your sons with that the situation with the dog, like
Yeah.
it's like
Don't be afraid of Preston, because I'm here.
I'm here. Yeah, well,
Just take
Not
off your shoes and
Preston.
go inside.
Preston about this big. Preston, not
Exactly.
Preston.
Exactly. So when the boys climb up in the corner, when the black boys climb up in the corner, after I told them, don't be afraid because I'm here, just go inside and put on your shoes. Are they, is that fear a rejection of the reality of my presence?
I think it's
well,
more of the
you said earlier
realization.
that fear.
Okay. Sure. Lauren?
So we said we agreed earlier that fear is tied to a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying fear, which would be a fear of something, is a rejection of the reality of God's presence. I would say no.
Why?
Because if I'm afraid of pain, that doesn't mean God's not with me. I'm just afraid of pain. If
But
I'm
if God
afraid
tells you don't be afraid of pain because I am with you, if he tells you that,
but it doesn't mean I don't think he's with me.
and that's why I'm asking about what does it mean to, what is God commanding? Right? Because that's why we started there, right, Jerry? What is he saying not to do? Because if he is saying, don't be afraid, don't respond to this thing with fear, choose another response because I am with you. If I'm choosing to be afraid after he's told me that, am I not rejecting that idea?
Yep.
But afraid. Okay, so then I guess we're back to the fear and afraid part because afraid.
So we translated it. We translated it, do not be afraid. NIV does, and many other versions. The literal word is do not fear. Another Bible will say, one Bible will say, do not be afraid. Another Bible will say, do not fear. Are they really different? Is the command different? Is the command not to fear different from the command not to be afraid? And that's why we took all that time in the fear and afraid part. What is fear? And fear is a response to a circumstance.
Okay, so I guess once again, when I'm afraid, I want to go the other direction from whatever the thing is that I'm afraid of. Fear, depending on the level of fear I have, I may still be able to engage with the thing with a certain level of fear still. If my fear is on extreme end, I will run the other direction. But if it's at a lesser level, I can still entertain, maybe engage, maybe tiptoe, maybe
Good.
whatever to engage with.
So what is God saying here? Don't be afraid or don't fear. What is he saying to Joshua when he said,
well, be afraid, because he said be courageous, meaning press on, be strong, don't.
do you know that the word afraid is not in there in the Hebrew, it's fear? What
I mean, I hear you.
Read that same verse in King James.
Which one? Jeremiah or Joshua?
Joshua 1.
King James.
So the same word for do not worry about whatever. What word is that?
Don't be anxious.
Right, but what's the word?
Hold on.
Is that a different word from the one they're using there?
From the one we're using in Jeremiah here. Here is fear. Tell me what verse you're talking about, and then we can find the word.
Like the don't worry what you will eat, because your Father in heaven knows that you need, blah blah blah.
That's Matthew 22.
Well, remember, Lorraine, remember, anxiety is in the future. Anxiety is not a present feeling. Yeah, it's an uncertainty of something you haven't experienced yet.
Correct.
So it couldn't be the same word.
So let's check Matthew 6:33. It says, "Don't worry about these things," which is not different from being afraid. But I will get the actual word, Matthew 6:31. And it's a different language altogether, but yeah.
Well, I guess I was asking because the same part of your body that controls fear also has to do with anxiety. I was trying to process
No.
it.
So King James says, "Take no thought," which is to be anxious, to care for, to seek, promote one's interests, to be troubled with cares, which is different from being afraid.
Anxiety has a lot to do with control and what you want to control in the future.
Okay.
Anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness.
Of something in the future.
Of something that you can't, that's uncertain. It's something that you may or may not happen.
So Joshua, in that situation, was facing uncertain situations going forward. Like that's why my brain was doing that.
So Joshua 1, let's go with Joshua 1:8.
And that's King James. Oh, it's like King James English.
1:9, sorry.
1:9.
Have I not commanded thee, be strong and of good courage, and be not afraid, which here is tremble with dread, fear, to
Dread.
cause terrify. Yes. It's not worry or anxiety.
Anxiety is feeling dread and fear and uneasiness.
To something that is uncertain.
Right. Wasn't that his situation though?
Yeah, I guess. But
so I guess that's why it's giving me that don't worry type.
But God is saying, don't be anxious, don't worry, because he says that in Philippians 4 very clearly, be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, present your request before God, and the peace of God will transcend your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus, right? So he says, don't be anxious. He says, don't worry. He says, don't fret. And all of it is because so whether you are anxious or worrying or afraid really doesn't matter, because all of it he's saying not to do.
Right.
So when I experience those things,
I'm rejecting the reality of God's presence. I guess ultimately.
what's so funny?
No, it's reject.
So that's assertion. I'm saying reject it or not. It's an assertion. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying that.
No. I don't think I still don't think it's rejecting his presence.
I'm saying it's rejecting the reality of it.
Right.
That's what rejecting the reality of his presence.
Yeah, I still can't.
What are you rejecting then?
That he's got you. Because I can know he's there, but do I believe that he's got me? Because
what's the value of him? What's the value of him communicating his presence? Because that's what he said. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. It's
supposed to make you feel that he's got you.
Yes, but when I say I am with you, what am I saying to you? When God says to you, don't be afraid because I am with you, what is he communicating? He's not just saying, I'm here, I'm standing in the room, he's communicating more than that, right?
Oh, well, you said his presence, the reality of his presence. So that's what I imagine, the fact that he's here, like he's with me. But that's not that right there when we're afraid and we're anxious and whatever. It's not because we don't know that he's here. It's because we don't know if he's got us. We're not sure if he's got us.
That's why I asked the question, Lorraine.
Subjective, because the way I would feel he would communicate to me that he's got me, and where you would feel that he communicates, so it becomes a subjective thing. But essentially, it's, do we believe that he's got us? Because if we did believe that he's got us, then we wouldn't be afraid, and we wouldn't feel anxious, and we wouldn't feel dread, and we wouldn't feel uneasy.
So can I put something in here? I'm gonna tap into my cliff. And, you know, he's not saying anything. There's this thing called there's the feelings wheel that I've learned a lot about in therapy. And one thing that I want to point out is that fear is a primary emotion.
Yo, I just found that wheel. I'm sorry. I'm so excited. Somebody else found it. I found it like 2 weeks ago, and it has changed my life. It's
a very important wheel.
It is a very important wheel. I can name my feelings now. That's all I have. Goodbye.
Right. She said goodbye. And so I say that to say secondary fear, secondary emotions that come out of fearfulness are scared, anxious, insecure, weak, rejected, and threatened.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then from those, you have helplessness, frightened, overwhelmed, worried, inadequate, inferior, worthless, insignificant, excluded, persecuted, nervous, or exposed. So if God says, do not fear, all of them bad boys that you could possibly experience, take them out. Eliminate all of those. Because
I can get with that.
With me, none of these matter.
Yeah. I like that explanation. Yeah. I can get with that.
Yeah. I like that. And Joshua, is Joshua's experience, he started off by saying, with the understanding that, all right, Joshua, you were Moses' assistant, like you were close to him. And he's like, I'm going to be with you just as I was with Moses. So you experienced that, you know, me being with him and what that looked like. I'm going to be with you that same way.
And that's learned and observed and experienced.
It's experienced. You can't learn fear. You have to experience fear.
No. The observation of how God was with Moses. It's observing and seeing and then having your experience. It's a collective.
Oh, for sure. But I think that's where we all are. Those that are in the understanding of who God is and are seeking to have a relationship with him. Like that is what it's about. It's about having experience with him. It's with Moses, right? It took years. Like he walked with God and he'd been through a lot. We saw a lot of it in, you know, the first few books of the Bible with Moses, where he started not really being very unsure about what God being with him looked like, and to where it was understood by everyone in the camp of Israel, like, look, this God is with Moses, and they know exactly what that meant. I think it's definitely something that's an experience, and it takes some time, experience of a lifetime. You know, that understanding that of who God is, what that is for you, that trust. I think trust is built the same way in our earthly relationships too with others. So it's the same thing with God, right? It's more or less us trusting who we say he is versus so.
Yeah, I was just going to add that knowing God in the New Testament is experiential knowledge. It's a word called gnosko, which means to know by experience. And that's what God is inviting all of us to have with him.
Yeah, man. That's what I remember my OGs would always say, you know, the scripture, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's always telling you to try them, right? Right, taste and see. See. Try it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Jared, what was that word again?
gnosko.
Gnosko.
Yeah, gin like gin rummy. OSKO.
Thanks for my takeaway. I appreciate it.
Yes, like one example of that word is John 10, 14, and 15. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. It's gnosko there. Or 1 John 4, 7, and 8. Knowledge that leads to love is a gnosko love. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and anyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Beloved, let us love one another. I remember the song. That's how I know what 1 John 4, 7, and 8. Yeah, y'all know that one? Beloved, let us love one another. Love one another. Right. That knowledge there is gnosko as well. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna try not to be afraid of this thing in my back and what it means. I'm gonna try to remind myself that God is with me and not be afraid of, or even be anxious and nervous of the uncertainty of what that could mean. I'm gonna choose a different response. I'm gonna choose a different response.
It's easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely.
Easier said than done.
Absolutely. The trouble with living sacrifices is that they could get off the altar.
Easier said than done.
Still a
Rashid,
choice.
Rashid said, yep, my little brother practiced that one in the house growing up. I have another Star Wars fan here, man. Don't bother try, do. There is no try.
Yoda.
Master Yoda.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been catching up to follow along with Ahsoka, so yeah. Yeah, I'm appreciating that. All right, we at 9:46. I mean, everybody coming in. Lauren, any follow on to where we were before we? I know you were still wrestling a few things out. Did you settle on correcting my assertion?
Yeah, I'm not with the God's presence part, but I'm settled on it's our fear that he don't have us. Like he says he has us. So it's basically calling God a liar, which is still worse than the presence one, but
One and the same thing for me, and I say it's one and the same thing for me because his word in the scripture is "Don't be afraid because I am here," which is the same as saying "I got you." Me, I'm not just here for show. I'm not just here to be here to check a box. Me being here is me saying "I got you," and so that's why I use presence because his presence is his sign that he got you. Yeah. Be afraid if I'm not here, because then I can't have you.
Yeah. It's interesting that was his message to Israel too, right? Hence the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. Do you reminder that whatever you're facing, I'm with you.
I'm with you.
We know, yeah, we know what they chose, but yeah.
I'm
but
here.
like them with the hardships they were going through, they're like, yeah, you here, but
So
what
they're
are you doing?
and he's like, Don't you see the pillar cloud by day and the fire by night? Why are you afraid? Because you're rejecting my presence, which is the sign that I got you. You know.
Right.
Yeah. Oh. He says, don't be afraid. 365 times in the Bible, I believe. Yes, that is what the count that people have been giving is. It's one for every day. One for every day. Yeah. Yeah, I just like the but why? Why not to be afraid? Because I'm with you. Because I'm with you. And that's always the answer. Because I'm with you. Do not be afraid. Why? Because the Lord will not leave you or forsake you. Do not be afraid. Why? Because He'll be with you wherever you go. His presence. It means more than just showing up, being in the room. All right, there's activity happening in the chat. Let me see if it's relevant to what we're talking about. No.
Maybe.
All right. I was waiting on Sean. He asked me to send him the link, and I sent it to him, and he didn't come on yet. Maybe he missed my email, and there was a delay or whatever. I know it's 10 minutes to 10, but did anybody have anything from their reading that they wanted to highlight, share, ask about?
I did, but I don't think it will be done in
Let's go. We're here. Sharika just reached. So, I just reached. I'm here. Let's go.
Yeah. So 2 different things. You could pick which one around easier. It may be really simple. I just noticed it today, and I was like, huh. One of them was, I screenshotted it to remember where it was. It was, so I'm gonna tell you the question, and I gotta find the verse. What is the Holy Spirit's testimony?
I was a verse.
I'm trying to find my image. It was talking about water and blood and Holy Spirit testimony. Oh my God. As proof that He. Why do I not know how to maneuver my phone all the time? Okay. All right. So it was 1 John 5:6.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put this up here just so we can track it afterwards. There's a question in here from Rashim. 1 John 1:5-6.
Yeah. The other one was about like loving your other believers. Why there's such an emphasis on that versus just generally loving.
Or we'll come back to that one. We'll take this one, try to talk to Rashim, and then come back to you. I think we could close all of them out. Courtney, read 1 through 11, please.
Of 1 John 5.
Yeah, 1 John 5.
Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has become a child of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves his children too. We know we love God's children if we love God and obey his commandments. Loving God means keeping his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. For every child of God defeats this evil world, and we achieve this victory through our faith. And who can win this battle against the world? Only those who believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And Jesus Christ has revealed or was revealed as God's Son by his baptism in water and by shedding his blood on the cross.
Pause.
Yeah.
Read that line again.
And Jesus Christ was revealed as God's Son by his baptism in water and by shedding his blood on the cross.
Okay, keep reading.
Not by water only, but by water and blood. And the Spirit, who is truth, confirms it confirms it with his testimony. So
Pause.
yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Confirms that he's God's son.
What does it say that he's confirming?
Right, but how? Okay, guess. So I know they're saying that all of this points to who Jesus Christ is, to God the Father, right? I get that. But how did the Spirit do that?
Anybody want to take that?
Because like I thought of like the dove when he came up out of the water, but I was like, I don't know if that's it, because that was
I think it explains it as you keep reading, because you said 1 through 11.
I did.
Okay.
Go ahead, finish it.
Okay. So we have these three witnesses: the Spirit, the water, and the blood. All three agree. Since we believe human testimony, surely we can believe the greater testimony that comes from God, and God has testified about His Son. All who believe in the Son of God know in their hearts that His testimony is true. Those who don't believe this are actually calling God a liar because they don't believe what God has testified about His Son. And this is what God has testified. He has given us eternal life, and this life is in His Son.
How do we get this life?
So I'm with it, but where? Like, how do we know? Okay, I know what I'm asking. Because it's essentially saying that they're all in one accord, pointing to the fact that he is the Father's Son. But I'm still missing how. How did the Spirit point out or testify that Jesus was his Son? I'm not disagreeing with it. I just was trying to figure out like how, where, when, is there?
There was the first testimony where God said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased," and the Spirit came and alighted on him as a dove.
Right.
There's God testifying with John, Peter, and and James, when Moses came down and God spoke to him and said that. There's the fact that Jesus was raised from the dead by the Spirit. There is the fact that the Spirit then came after the disciples left.
Right.
The Spirit came and and then there's the works that Jesus did that he did by the power of the Spirit that testified that he was of the Father.
Oh, okay. Proves of where his connection.
Yes. And that's what that's one of the things that the spiritual gifts do. They demonstrate that the messenger is from God.
Okay. That was what I needed. Because it was like three witnesses. I was like, I get the Father saying it, I get the baptism, I get dying on the cross, but where was the Holy Spirit testimony per se? Is what I was not.
And then the work of the Holy Spirit post Jesus is also that, because John 15, 14, 15, 16 talks about the work of the Spirit and him coming back to speak only what he hears from Jesus. You know what I'm saying? So all the work that the Spirit does after the fact is also the testimony. He comes to testify and confirm, the legitimacy of all that Jesus is and was and has done and will be.
So it's more of a visual testimony versus something. I guess when I think testimony, that's what I was trying to understand. But I guess the blood, the water. Okay. Okay. I got it.
Cool. Quickly, I'm gonna go to Rashim here. Jumping in Second Chronicles this week. I was reading how many kings did evil on the side of the Lord. I was wondering why you think so many of the kings of Israel turned from the Lord, even as far as God allowing the Babylons to take. I think that is cut off, but it will show up on Facebook, to take them into captivity. Why you think so many of the kings of Israel turned from the Lord? Why you guys think that to be the case?
Same reason why we do it.
I was going to say you want the short or the long answer.
Right. Like, and I'm not even trying to be facetious. I'm saying that because I think sometimes we don't realize that our small sins or our small putting ourselves first or our small not touching base with God is turning from God. And it seems of higher gravity because of the position of the kings, but it's simply making a choice without consent and or the authority to make such choice. I did it because I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had decent motivations or justifications, what I thought were decent justifications. I mean, when you think about the first king, right? He was like, those people, if Samuel is taking a long time. These people are a little unsettled. I need to calm down their fears. I'm going to do this thing. Instead of waiting for Samuel, I'm going to do this thing.
Right.
Jeroboam comes later on and sees all that Solomon did wrong in trying to appease his wife. Solomon was like, here, what I'm going to do. I'm going to marry all these women from all these places so the kingdom will stay unified, right? That's smart business as a king. So I'm going to protect and expand the kingdom this way. But in order to do that, I had to make them feel comfortable. I'm going to worship their gods. No big deal. I don't really believe, but I'm going to do it because, they're here and I want to make them feel at home. I want to make them feel welcome. Right? And now he's doing it, and he's doing it out in public, so everybody's seeing it, and they're going astray with him. Jeroboam comes in, God raises him up, and Jeroboam's first thought is, I need to find a way for the people to come and worship up here, because if not, they will go down to the south, and then I will lose my kingdom. And so, yeah, to Sharika's point is, I have what I think is a valid justification to do something that makes sense to me, either because I want to do it or because I am afraid of something happening.
Mm-hmm.
What up, Sean? And then Lauren, you had one more.
Yeah. This one might be tricky. What is the sin that does not lead to death?
Where is that? Yes.
First Kings 5:6. Sorry. Whoa, no. First John 5:16. I'm thinking of Kings for what we were just talking about.
First John
Because
what?
if fellow believer sinning in a way that does not lead to death, you should pray, and God will give that person life. But there is a sin that leads to death, and I'm not saying to pray about those.
Yeah, John what? First John what? You said First John.
1 John 5, verse 16.
1 John 5.
I'll just read the note that my Bible says. I think this is the debatable issue. I don't know that there's any one person who has a definitive answer on what John is talking about here.
Okay.
But the people who are editing my Bible say, offer this. A sin that believers commit for which forgiveness has been secured by the atoning sacrifice of Christ. And he cross-referenced that with verse 1:9 and chapter 1, verse 9, and chapter 2, verses 1 to 2. The sin that leads to death is probably the sin of secessionists. They denied that Jesus is come in the flesh, rejected the significance of his atoning death, disobeyed God's commands, and showed no love for true believers. By persistence in these things, people place themselves outside the sphere of forgiveness so that their sins become sins unto death. Essentially, just to restate it in a more simple term, Jesus died for our sins, all of them, right? And it will forgive all of that. But if after Jesus has died for your sins and you decide, I'm going to reject him, that would be the sin that leads to permanent death, because these sins, while they lead to death, it's more of the sleep death. And they can keep you away from him. But these are the ones where I am intentionally rejecting the opportunity to be saved from death and have life. And so he's distinguishing between those sins, just general purpose sins, and then the outright rejecting of the work of the Spirit to reclaim us and give us this new life in Christ. Because once you do that, you don't want the forgiveness. You don't want this saving power. You're rejecting it outright, and eventually that's going to lead you to eternal death, to final death. And it's not that the sin is so bad, it's just you saying, oh, no thanks, I'll pass. It's almost like, hey, you're sick and you're dying in a thing, and somebody's coming and passing out medicine, right? And you decide you don't want the medicine. Well, now you've committed the sin that will lead to death because you've rejected the medicine. And we're not talking about a single rejection moment. We're talking about a permanent posture of rejection. Not good. Don't come back with me with that stupidness. Don't bring that back around here. Fire for that, fire for you. I good where I am. Leave me, let me die over here in peace. The sin that leads to death. At least that's what they are painting here. The statement of what's been described here. I don't know that I have not studied it enough, but that's what is being suggested here, proposed, offered. It does make sense. There's some logic to it. I can follow the logic, but I can't say with any definitive. Sean, is there something you wanted to share with us? Or that we was talking about, comment on in the chat, and so
yeah, I was having some issue hearing, but I'm here. I'll join intermittently.
Oh, all right. But we're about to close.
Yeah, I got the whole show, so nothing wrong with the closing thought. It's okay.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Rashim, we got you. All right. Then we're gonna do the takeaways. So this is a part of the conversation. We talked about a number of things, and we had a number of ideas. If you had to describe one thing that you will like going home with chew on, or that's good words for me today, or I need to think about that some more. What would that one thing be? Jerry, I know you shared yours again, but shared yours already, but share it again, restate it. You're already ready with yours. Jerry, you get to go first.
Well, you know what mine is gonna be, right?
No, remind me.
How do you pronounce it? Genesco?
Genosco.
That
Genosco.
I just keep coming back to that in one way or another, where it's what God wants most is that relationship with us. And if we understand He is with us, we abide in His presence, the rest just follows, right? The peace, the understanding, the not being afraid or not fearing. Yeah, it's all tied. Just this week, I read something that says fear is actually relational. It's usually tied to a fear of something or someone, and therefore it could be removed by something or someone, theoretically, or relation to something or someone. So, Janesco, right?
I heard Pastor Wright say that one time. He was did a series called The Fungus of Fear.
Yeah.
And he was making that point in that series. Oh, Jerry, I have a verse for you. John 17, 3-4 and 18. I'm going to come back and have you read it as part of your takeaway.
John 17.
3-4 and verse 18.
Okay.
No, just 3-4. Just go with 3-4.
No, this is. Yo, you want me to read it now? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. If you have it. I was going to come back, but if you have it.
Now, this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. I have brought you glory on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do.
Eternal life is the Genosco.
Yeah.
Yeah. Word. All right. Courtney.
Yes, sir. All right. Tonight I think it was just interesting. I didn't really think about all these things, the differences between fear, being afraid, and even in the verses, how important it is about being courageous and strong. But the takeaway for me was just that danger is learned, and I just think that again that this relationship and just having a better, like more trust in who God is when He says that He's with us. What does that mean for us? I think that just grows over time. So I'm just encouraged by those thoughts. I'm encouraged by the people that in that I've met along life's paths that have walked with God a little bit longer and have encouraged me based on their relationship that I could trust Him and that I could keep going on and finding out for myself, so I won't have that kind of fear as growing into it. Like,
Word. Thanks, Courtney. How about you, Lauren?
So like when we were talking about like fear tied to something, um, so
Sorry, Courtney. You getting a shout out on the chat there, buddy.
So me so let's say I'm afraid of, for example, pain or hardship or whatever, right? You could put a list on whatever. My acceptance of God present doesn't mean I won't experience the thing that I'm afraid of. So like it doesn't mean, okay, you're here, I won't experience any of those things. And so I think that's the part because it's obviously the Bible continually tells you that it's not an easy path, right? So that's given, that is well understood. But there are certain things that we are afraid of, that we are fearful of, that we are anxious about, that we dread. And you may very well experience all of those things and He still be present. And that is a very sober thought.
Hmm. So what is he telling you when he says don't respond with fear?
I do not know. Because
Ah.
I can accept he's there. I can think he's got me and still hate every moment of that experience.
Or you can say, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And then he goes on to say, which doesn't make sense to me because I don't understand this dynamic, but thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies, which means I can now go sit down and eat comfortably while danger is all around me. That I didn't understand that concept till just now. I say it all the time, but um, you anoint my head with oil, which means I'm now significant. And now I'm not thinking about this. He writes this poem, this prayer when in the how many years while he was on the run from Saul. Uh, yeah. Um, to your point, yes, you're gonna experience those things. Um, but your perspective becomes your reality. Yeah. I think that's what he's trying to adjust for us, our perspective. Yeah.
Mm, we'll talk about it after.
Trisha, you're
Yeah.
a little quiet today, reflective. So, is there anything that you're taking? Any one thing you're going home with today? I mean, you're already home, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes, I've been quiet. This conversation about fear is just, it stirred up a lot for me. So that's probably why I've been so quiet. Um, but it made me remember a story. Not a story. Why am I saying story? It made me remember a time while I was going to church where there was an older lady, and she gave me a little box, maybe like 3 inches, and in the box, it's a little box, and it says on the outside of the box, God's promises. And I kept it for a lot of years. And throughout my many moves, obviously, I've lost it now. But the one, there was one verse in that box that always stood out to me. And though I will admit that I'm not very good with remembering Bible verses, and I'm not very good at remembering a lot of things, there was one verse in Timothy, and I can't remember if it was First Timothy or Second Timothy, but it always comes to me, and it's God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. So it helps to remind me that fear, when I'm feeling or experiencing fear, that it doesn't come from God, because that is not something that He, bestows. So that's how I think about it. But also, just dealing with fear has been something that I've been dealing with significantly during this time period in my life, and just learning how to just like let go and not like want to be in control of everything. Um, and it's scary, like, and just the discussion of the difference between like, are you afraid? Is it fear? Which one is it? All I know is it's like Lorraine said, like, whatever it is, I know that you're with me, but I feel like Jesus in Gethsemane, like, bruh, like, if you can just take this away from me, I'm here for it, like, for real. But if it's not that, then let me just get my mind right for what I'm about to go through. And I feel like that's where I am with this conversation. Like, I feel like there's a lot of things that I legit don't want to deal with. I do not. I absolutely do not want it. But if I have to deal with it, then let me just get my mind right and just prepare for it. So that's pretty much where I'm at with that. And that's I guess I'm not in a space where I'm trying to like take it apart or whatever. I'm honestly personally trying to figure out how to deal with my own everyday fears and what that looks like, and trying to put into practice what it's like to fear not moment to moment, because it's not, I know, so I think somebody in the chat said like it's a choice. Like it's a choice to not fear, and it is, but it's a very, for me, my experience is just like it's a very difficult choice. And so it's like each moment I have to tell myself like just don't be anxious. Like it says in I think it's either Ephesians or Philippians. Like I said, I don't remember. Don't be anxious. Just say what you have to say, and then just let it go. So I haven't figured it all out, but yeah, that's what I have been ruminating on during your conversation. So
Word. Sorry, Lorraine. So Lorraine asked a question in the chat that we have here, and it was opening a can of worms. So I just said a simple no, laugh out loud, and everybody chuckled at it. Because I could explain it and unpack it, but I want to do it after we go through the takeaways. And I didn't want to upstage what Trisha was saying because it was profound. But I wanted to also account for what was happening that you could see on the screen. So that's it.
But yeah, that's where I'm at with that. So yeah, it's a moment to moment thing for me at the moment. Just like choosing daily, minute by minute, I am not going to be fearful or anxious, which is hard. It's very hard, but that's where I am.
I think Rasheem has this comment here for you, Trisha, and maybe for all of us. He says, I like it as a roller coaster, and being in God's spirit is like riding a roller coaster, but knowing everything is going to be okay. It's not that life isn't hard. It's being able to enjoy the roller coaster, and that's what God's peace is for me.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Wow. That's the peace. That's the peace that Job got when God showed up and said, "But you know who I is, boy? You know what you know about me." He didn't say I'm a fix it. He didn't say I'm a help you. He said, "Well, you know about me."
Yeah.
And Job went to the corner and say, "Yeah, all right, I got you. Peace, peace be still."
Yeah. For sure.
Cliff, I think you could come up.
Listen, it's been a lot of knowledge being thrown out, man. It was good to just listen for real. I'm going to say, I don't know how impactful my takeaway is going to be, but what stuck out in my mind is if you stand next to a hot dog stand or a double stand long enough, you're going to buy one. I'll let that sink in.
Maybe.
That's not a very presidential, okay?
Right. Not presidential.
Maybe.
I
know I have an aunt for whom that is not true. She will never, ever buy doubles by the side of the road. Never. And probably not ever eat a hot dog either. And I don't care how long you punish her and make her stand up there. Not doing it.
Yeah, man.
She don't even allow us to bring doubles home for her. She don't even participate at all.
So would she make her own? Is she making her own?
No. She has issues with the potential hygiene dynamic going on there. You know, the fact.
Oh, okay.
And so she's nothing you could do could sell her on that. So that's why I say maybe.
Well, I'm with her. I'm with her on the hot dog, but I don't know about the doubles. I'm gonna have to pass on her with that. But the hot dog definitely.
Courtney, people still eating glizzies. That's wild to me. So wild.
What's a glizzy?
What's a glizzy? Oh man, that's for after show.
Offline. Offline. We'll bring you up to speed.
Offline. Okay.
All right, Sharika, Bishop, talk to me.
I think all the feelings conversation reminded me of a conversation I had earlier this week, and where we concluded, and I wrote it down, and it's feelings are fleeting. They are real, but not necessarily true.
I'm with it. How Monte Killer say? They change just like the weather.
And you choose to hold on to some longer than others.
Yeah. Feelings are fleeting like weather. Yeah. They make good servants, but are awful masters. Good. Hi, Sean.
All right. I must say, Cliff was quiet tonight. Jerome was leading the pack tonight, and I like how Sharika came in and dealt with fear. It kind of made me put something in perspective. I was questioning myself, like, yo, what am I afraid of? Or when last I was fearful of something? Usually I'm an electrician. I'm usually going towards where the issue is, right? Like fearlessly and stuff like that. And two things I came up with: emotionally vulnerability. Sometimes it allows fear to come in, and the other thing, the Bible say, Proverbs talk about, um, fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So that's why I was pointing to Eden, right? When man fell, everything for the first time is not in order, it was in chaos. So it's like everything adapt, plants, animal, man adapt this whole different perspective. So the rose that you could have picked or touched freely now have thorns because this tree is protecting itself. Man is doing the same thing because, like, I don't know you, what you coming to do me. So sometimes the lack of knowledge, it will create fear sometimes. So we run back to God. Like to me, like fear and disobedience are synonymous, right? But if we have a knowledge of God, then that disappear because now we know, okay, we have to be obedient to this God. This God that we know, He's gonna protect. There's no fear because I'm hiding behind this God, right? So I think it comes back to we move closer to God and fear dissipates. That's the thing. So you look in the society today, everybody don't believe. Well, okay, there's a God, there's a Jesus is coming again. Oh, I'm religious, but are you doing the thing that associates you with the God that you're religious to? So, of course, soon as you hear something, okay, I'm so fearful, I need all these help. When your help is right there, the God that you serve. So it's just one of those discussion. It's simple, but it just makes you put a lot of things into perspective about fear. So I like the discussion tonight.
Word. I would say that my takeaway is coming from Sharika's feelings wheel information. Because initially when I started today, I was like, oh, I'm not afraid, but I am a little nervous. But they're all on that side of the feelings wheel, and they all root in fear, whether it's you want to divide it with certainty, uncertainty, anxiety, worry. We want to pass it, but it's all on that one section. And he says, don't do anything that comes out of that because I am with you. So it don't really matter whether it's anxiety or fear, whether it's about something that you're sure about or not sure about. Don't do any of it. Don't respond. I like that, Jerry. I don't respond with fear to any of it because I am with you. Choose a different response. A response that allows you to acknowledge that I'm here and I got you. I'm here and I got you. So that's my takeaway. Word. I didn't see anything else in the chat. We are 10:27, so let us close with a word of prayer, and then we'll make any other little announcements before we transition. Anybody wants to volunteer to pray tonight? I think Courtney was volunteering. I think I saw him raise his hand. That's what he was doing. He was spinning his mic, or he was raising his hand.
I was trying to fix my mic.
Oh, you're fixing your mic to pray. All right, cool.
All right. All right. All right. Heavenly Father, I want to come to you now, Lord, just thanking you for this opportunity. Start this month with this word between us. We ask that as we continue to have these discussions, that other people will be blessed now and in the future. May these conversations bring uh, further discussion, further thought. May we all kind of have a better understanding just on this fear that sometimes is innate, but that we can overcome this and many other things. Pray that we continue to trust you, Lord, more now than we did yesterday. I pray for all the families here represented, all those families of everyone watching online. May we all have a wonderful Sabbath. Pray that we all be able to come back together next time with further questions and just thought and just more passion about reading the word and just talking and discussing it together as we try to become better stewards of our time here. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. Appreciate you, Courtney. We are on every first and third Friday, which means we're on again on the 17th of November and then again on the 1st of December. So November 17th and then December 1st. So particularly for my crew, remember December 1st. So the first day in December we are on. It's a Friday. We follow our Bible reading plan, Water for the Thirsty Bible reading plan. So it's not a topical study. It's more a case of while we were reading, what stood out to us, what we like, what we had questions about. That's what we talk about, and it could come from any number of places because our reading plan is taking us through the Bible in a year, and it's like 4 chapters a day, 1 from the New Testament, 2 from the Old Testament, and then a Psalms and a Proverbs. So that's why it kind of feels a little all over the place, because kind of is. But that's by design. If you would like to be able to follow more clearly and make more sense, read along with us and then bring your own questions or comments or feedback, just like Rashim did today. We're happy to have your conversations. And if you'd like to join us from the comfort of your home, hit me up at info@waterforthethirsty.com, and we can see how we can allow you to have you be a part of our conversations as we've done with several individuals over time here. I think that's it. Cliff, did I miss anything? All right, we good. Then, until the next time, guys, drink up and drink deeply. See you on the 17th. Have a good one.